lot of questions and concerns regarding the general process and efforts to repeal Prop 19. So I did want to kind of dive into that segment right now. I know there's a lot of activity happening throughout the state, and luckily we have Chairman Vasquez and members of the Assessor staff with us today to provide us with some insight into that current landscape. Chairman Vasquez, I did want to go ahead and start with you and rely on your expertise for our first question. Has there been a system developed to monitor the number of times a property owner has transferred their base year value under Proposition 19?
Yes, the answer is yes. The BOE has developed a detailed tracking system that is being used by the board and assessors to make sure that everyone in the state has the same opportunity, that no one takes undue advantages under the law. I guess,
what paperwork does a property owner need to file to apply for a Proposition 19 exclusion or base year value transfer?
So the most important thing for everyone is, I think Assessor Prang alluded to the fact with base year transfers, or I should say intergenerational or inter-family transfers, between parent and child or grandparent to grandchild, the homeowner's exemption now becomes very important because this was not a requirement before. So I want to really emphasize the importance of that. And he's also stated that 1 year becomes really important. So if I'm talking about family transfers, the homeowner's exemption is something that's new and important and has a very hard deadline of 1 year that must be claimed. But the other important thing is that a lot of times people indicate on their preliminary change of ownership report information that may indicate they're going to have a transfer that may qualify. So they need to know that a claim has to be filed for each one of these. And there are actually specific claim forms for all the different instances. And these are located on our website. So if they go to forms, they can find one for a base year transfer for seniors, disabled, or they can find the family ones for parent to child, etc. But they are specific claims and they must be actually filed. So I'm gonna make that point.
If I already stated on my deed and preliminary change in ownership report, aka PCOR, that the transfer was a parent-child transfer, why did the assessor's office send me a Proposition 19 parent-child transfer exclusion claim form?
Sure, and this is a kind of a topic that Nicole just touched on, but just to kind of go through it step by step. To obtain a Prop 19 benefit of any kind, you do have to file a particular Prop 19 claim form, whether it be for base year value transfers, whether it be for intergenerational parent-child transfers. So that's the important thing I think Nicole touched on already. Now, why would you receive a copy of those claims in the mail from us? The recording of a transfer deed or preliminary change in ownership report or PCOR, those do not constitute the filing of a claim for a Proposition 19 benefit. Even if those particular documents indicate that the transfer that's being effected is in fact a parent-child transfer. So as Nicole stated, when we receive those documents from the Registrar Recorder's office at the Assessor's office, it notifies us that that is the intent of the transfer. And so as a courtesy, we send out these claim forms to you so that you can file timely and appropriately. So it's not duplicative in any way. It's just a friendly reminder from the office that there is this additional claim that has to be filed, and now you have it once we've mailed it out.
Our next question. We understand that there are many concerns regarding processing time. How long is it taking to process Prop 19 parent-child transfer exclusion and base year value transfer claims?
So this is one of those answers.
Nicole, you hold for just a second, just to add to that while you're answering, and I saw in the Q&A session as well, so people want to have an idea of where we are in processing not only Prop 19, but also the Proposition 58s that were piling up during this period of time.
Right, thank you, Jeff, for that. And I'm going to have to start off with an apology and saying that this is something that we are working diligently to expedite the processing of these, but I have to give the context. We literally get thousands, tens of thousands of these exclusions every year. And prior to the change in Prop 19, we were seeing that type of increase where they were building year by year. With these aggressive dates, what we found is at the beginning of the year in February, because the date or the implementation effective date for the new rules was coming into play, we saw exponential increases in those types of applications. And so we have dedicated all the resources we can to try to get those processed as soon as possible. But in the meantime, when it comes to Prop 19, we really have focused on these new ones of getting notification out to people so they understand, one, we've received them, and also we've been asking for information. So Assessor Prem, when we look at that, the timeframes are varying. We are putting more resources as we speak to get this done. But again, there's still system changes and things are happening in the interim. I want to stress, since we have this forum, that when people are receiving requests for documentation from us, one way that they can really help us to expedite the review of their claim forms is to respond. Many times there's elements that are missing. There's verification information that we need, and we'll reach out to request this information. And so when people can respond back to us quickly, it's very helpful. And I also want to put this out that our Prop 19 inquiry at assessor.lacounty.gov is an email address. And we can put that in the chat. Prop 19 inquiry at assessor.lacounty.gov is one way that people can expedite and get their information into us and also ask their Prop 19 questions. So right now we're actually reviewing all of the Prop 19s that have been received to date, and people can anticipate that they will be getting notification in the next couple of weeks to verify receipt, request information, etc. But there is a backlog in those reviews.
Thank you again for those resources and for that information, Nicole. But I do want to go ahead and open up this part of the conversation to both Chairman Vasquez and to Assessor Prang, because I know that there's a lot of interest and concern surrounding the efforts to amend and to repeal Prop 19 potentially. So both Assessor Prang, Chairman Vasquez, what efforts, if any, are underway to amend or to repeal Prop 19?
Well, what I can tell you is that the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, and I think I saw on the participants list that there's representatives of the Howard Jarvis listening in, they have submitted language to the Attorney General for something they call title and summary, which once that's approved, they will have the authority to begin collecting signatures to put another measure on the ballot. It's important to note that Proposition 19 was a constitutional amendment. So we cannot change the provisions of it either by legislation or by administrative direction. It requires another ballot measure. Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association believes that the parent to child, the reduction in benefits for family inheritance, the parent to child, grandparent to grandchild were unfortunate, and I think they're unpopular, and they're going to try to have that component of Proposition 19 repealed. Obviously, collecting signatures statewide can be a big task. We'll keep you informed about what we know about that measure as it develops, but that is actively in that undertaking is actively underway as we speak.
The other two measures that are out there that I'm aware of, one of them is ACA 9, which was introduced by the Assembly member Kevin Keeley, which is basically a constitutional amendment to reverse it. Now, this has to get 2/3 vote from the legislators to move forward. So that's another avenue that's in the process. In the event that the Jarvis group is not able to collect the signatures, hopefully we can get, especially those that are listening and are very interested in this issue, weigh in with their representatives, whether it's somebody on the Assembly or the Senate, to advocate for this amendment, which is ACA 9, because it needs 2/3 of that legislative body to move it out and get it onto the ballot. So that is another way. There's also SB 668, which was a Senate bill by Bates, but all that does is just delay it, the implementation, which, because this thing was voted in by the voters, the legislator can't reverse it without bringing it back to the voters. It has to go back to the voters. That's why you see the movement going on outside with the Harvard Jarvis Taxpayers Group, and internally with the legislators with the ACA 9. But the ACA 9, like I said, even if it passes the legislative body, it still has to go before the voters to reverse it, because it is a constitutional amendment.
Will properties that have been approved be retroactively changed?
So if, that's actually a really good question. I don't know that I can answer that one. Tony or Nicole, or maybe, but if they were to repeal Prop 19, would they,
Well, I think what, one of the things we need to look at especially as we're crafting this new language on if it, let's say we put something, or whether it's the legislator or the Jarvis group, when they put something together on the ballot, I think we need to be actively participating to make sure that they include that, because you're right. In the event that, let's say they get it on the ballot, we have to make sure that it takes care of these folks that are kind of caught in the middle, that may have transferred their property or attempted to transfer their property under the old rule.
Yeah, just to elaborate, Chair Vasquez, like you're saying, it's going to really be dependent on the language. And so if it doesn't have specific language that talks about it being retroactive, it's possible it could be prospective for a period of time, but we'll have to wait to see exactly what that specific language is. And then based on that, that's how we have to implement or administer these reversals.
This kind of wraps up our third segment of questions that we received beforehand in preparation for the event.